Hi, how are you? Good to talk to you.
You too. I'm doing well, and we appreciate you for a couple moments. And let's get right into it. So, obviously, you guys just had the Deontay Wilder, Eric Molina heavyweight title bout. And, it's interesting because I thought going into this fight, Wilder wasn't tested when it came to the body shots in the midsection. And we saw Molina do that a little bit. He caught him off guard in that third round. And, Al, were you surprised, though, after that shot by Molina? It seemed as though he didn't know how to finish off Wilder.
Yeah, I had a hard time pursuing his attack. And I think that was a moment, it was an opportunity missed for Eric Molina. Clearly, Molina came in. He was ranked in the top 10 by the WBC, but then he thought that ranking was inappropriate. And that wouldn't have been the first time ever in the sport of boxing where someone was ranked in the top 10 that wasn't quite appropriate. But Molina, we knew, had power, and it hurt Chris Arreola in the first round of their fight, but then got knocked out. But he just couldn't find a way to close the show against Wilder. And you know what? You can always look at things depending on your viewpoint, is like glass half full or glass half empty. For people that looked at that performance for Wilder as glass half empty, they said, well, had that been Klitschko, had that been Anthony Joshua, the very fine UK heavyweight who had hurt him with one of those punches, they would have been able to finish him off. We don't know that for sure, and of course these are all part of the growing pains of a fighter. And so it created a lot of drama in front of 9,000 fans in Birmingham who were very squarely in the corner of Deontay Wilder.
We knew Molina going in was the underdog, and he was down around number 4 two more times in round number 5, and then showed a lot of grit and a lot of heart. Did he, by any chance, script or create a little bit of a blueprint for future heavyweights, the ones that you mentioned, and distinguish himself a little bit to try to beat a guy like Deontay Wilder? Because let's be honest, the guys that you mentioned, we know Steve Cunningham's going to fight Antonio Tarver. It seems to me that those would be another setup fight. And a lot of people have argued that Deontay Wilder's had a padded record. I think he's a very good fighter, but I thought after the other night, I still questioned how good he was. But did Molina show some cracks, some chinks in the armor here?
Well, yeah, here's the thing about Wilder. Until he got Berman Stavern,
yep,
you can make a very strong case that his record was just not filled with enough top fighters, and many didn't believe he was going to beat Stavern. Some of that happened because Stavern's performance was subpar. So I think it's safe to say there are still questions about Deontay Wilder, and some of them may have been aggravated, if you will, by what Molina did. Yes, you made the point Molina went to the body well. He did it very well. Molina claimed that Wilder couldn't fight going backwards. Well, he kind of showed that to some degree, even though Wilder boxed effectively against Stavern. Now, having said all that, Wilder won virtually every round of the fight, except maybe one or two, scored 4 knockdowns, and ended up dominating the fight. But there is no question that a taller heavyweight, whether it's Tyson Fury or Vladimir Klitschko or Anthony Joshua, or maybe Alexander Povetkin, who will be the next fight that Wilder gets.
Yeah, mandatory. Yep.
Mandatory. There's no question one of those people will test him further because when you face part of the reason Molina wasn't able to close is because of the physical disadvantages he faced.
I brought up Fury to Mark Breland a couple times, and he said, hey, it doesn't matter how big, how tall, how strong you are. The guy has no chin. We know Fury is a type of fighter that will try to take you out of your game mentally, do a couple different things, drop those elbows, make it an ugly fight, maybe clinch. When we go forward now, who would be the guy to give the biggest threat in your eyes to Wilder? Because to me, and I say this with respect, he is somewhat a vulnerable champ.
Yeah, that's what he is. That's exactly right. And that's precisely what he is. Larry Holmes, I'm not putting him in Larry Holmes' category. Larry Holmes was a much better fighter and overall was a great champion. Larry Holmes was a vulnerable champion who would go down, who people thought, well, I'm the guy that's going to get him. And that makes you extra marketable. But, yes, he is a vulnerable champ. As far as the people that he lives in a heavyweight division that is not very deep. And there are only about, right now, given his confidence level, Wilder, and where he's at, what he believes he can do, there's about 3 or 4 heavyweights that I think pose threats. One of them may well be Povetkin, who he's fighting next. The other is, of course, Vladimir Klitschko, who's fighting Tyson Fury, who is also one of the other people that poses a threat. So one of the threats to Wilder will, I don't want to say will be eliminated but from the equation, but probably will in the short-term equation when they fight. And the fourth one is a young man that most American fans don't know. He won the gold medal in the 2012 Olympics. He's 11-0. His name is Anthony Joshua. He's 6'6". He is everything Deontay Wilder is physically, but he's an infinitely better technical fighter and just as powerful. But we don't know. Anthony Joshua hasn't been hit with a big punch yet, so we don't know about that.
And he's also a young fighter, too, from the UK, just 25 years of age. And you can't really go by his last fight against, I'm not going to say Kevin Johnson, the journeyman, but be that as it may. Let's move on quickly. All right, what's next for GGG? Because, look, is he going to have to move up?
For who is it? I didn't hear.
Golovkin, GGG, Gennady Golovkin.
Oh, Golovkin. He's in the same quandary he's been in for a long time. He can't fight Mayweather at 154. Mayweather won't do it. In the middleweight division, most of the middleweights just not willing to fight him, whether it's Cotto or Andy Lee or Peter Quillen or whoever. So he can't find himself too many good middleweight fights. And even moving up is difficult because nobody's ready to make the Andre Ward fight right now, but the Froch fight is out there for him. So I think a great fight for Gennady Golovkin would be, and a difficult fight, and a dangerous fight, by the way.
And now Ward won't fight Froch again because they already had that fight. So
yeah, it's unlikely. I think that's going to happen. Ward, of course, Andre Ward in action this week against Paul Smith, a pretty good fighter from the UK, but for Gennady, I think the logical fight, if they can find a way to make it, is Froch. And that represents the best thing he's got going for him is that Froch has been out a year.
Yeah.
And Golovkin is active. But that's a very difficult fight. To ask him, he's not even a big middleweight, Golovkin. So for him to go up to 168 and not fight at a catchweight and fight Froch, it would be a testament to his willingness to fight.
And real quick before we move on, when you mentioned Ward taking on a 40-fight veteran in Smith, I'd like to see where that Russ is going to be and how well he performs, which kind of leads me into two more quickies. And again, a couple moments with Showtime's Al Bernstein, the Hall of Famer. Do not forget, he's got that great YouTube channel, Al Bernstein's Boxing Hangouts, where it's a lot of interaction with the fans. We'll talk about that in a moment. Danny Garcia, really not a big secret here, but moving up to 147. Not a surprise. He's going to fight one of your contemporaries that you do the broadcast with, Paulie Malignaggi. And I personally think it is a crossroads fight for both fighters. And I've been, a couple years ago, everyone thought Danny Garcia was going to be the next, I'm not going to say golden boy, but the next superstar.
Right.
And we all went on the guts and the grit against Matisse and that win. But then you look at the other fights, and I quite frankly has thought he's lost his last couple fights. I thought he lost against Herrera. And it's a situation now where, hey, if I'm Danny Garcia, I'm certainly not going to fight Victor Pasto. I wouldn't want to fight a tall, lanky guy who's got a deadly left hook and a right uppercut. So by that being said, does he get a little bit of a hit here? Is it within the boxing world? Are people starting to question Garcia going forward?
Yeah, I think probably the answer is yes to that. I didn't think he was going to be Lucas Matisse, and he did. And he needs to get all the credit in the world for that because he boxed well. He knocked Matisse down. He took the biggest punches Matisse could throw, and I think Danny Garcia has a really good chin. Since then, he's underperformed. I definitely thought he lost to Mauricio Herrera. He took on a ridiculously soft touch in Rod Salka. And then many people think he could have easily lost to Peterson.
Lamont Peterson, yes.
So at this juncture, yeah, he's got to rebuild his. I think it's about kind of not rebuilding, but fortifying his brand. Paulie represents probably, for him, I'm guessing, their feeling is the right kind of opponent because he's a boxer, he's not a big puncher. Paulie, too, is not a a huge 147-pounder. You know, he moved up from 140.
Right.
And so I'm sure they think that this it will make it a fight that they can handle. Now, the flip side of that is that, you know, while Garcia's a big puncher at 140, he's not the kind of monstrous puncher that I think Paulie Malignaggi says to himself, I can't step into the ring with, even at this age, even in my 30s, even after being knocked out, stopped by Porter. So if Paulie Malignaggi can get up ahead of steam during this fight and box well for 3 or 4 rounds, it'll be a very interesting fight with Garcia. Now, Garcia rightfully will go in the favorite. And then the question is, will he even get which is what you alluded to, will he get the proper bounce from beating Paulie? Or will they say, well, look, Paulie's 33, he lost to Porter before this, he's got 1 foot half outside the sport and 1 half foot in it, you know, what does that do for you? So, I mean, you know, that's how boxing goes when people evaluate these things. But clearly it's a stepping stone fight for him at 147.
Yeah, and again, a couple minutes with Showtime's Al Bernstein. Rich Quiñones here. We'll take you up to 2 o'clock. Look, if Garcia loses a fight against an older boxer in his first fight moving up, to me, that's disaster. I mean, you mean to tell me he'd rather he'd give up a title than rather fight maybe a rematch with Matisse or Herrera or Peterson? You know, again, I don't think we're ever going to know. He's an enigma to me, Al. Sometimes you mentioned Rod Salko. That was a joke of a fight. That was a mismatch from the beginning. So
yeah, I think that's a good word. That's a good word to use about Danny Garcia. He is an enigma. Look, before, at the beginning, we looked at him, you know, and the fans in Philadelphia understand. They know what he did as an amateur, and he's a great amateur. At the beginning of his career, he seemed like a fighter who worked hard and overachieved. Then he seemed like a fighter that you said, world-class, absolutely world-class, and you say, oh, we underestimated Danny Garcia. Then, unfortunately, he started to live back down to form of a fighter who maybe reached, you know, his glass ceiling. And now it's up to him to prove that that's not the case. So he is an enigma. It's very difficult to really you know, Danny Garcia is one of those people that's one great or bad performance away from living up or down to everyone's expectations.
Yeah, I agree. Before I let you get out of here, Al Bernstein's Boxing Hangout's a pretty cool thing you have going on with your YouTube channel. That, you know, a lot of interaction with fans. I mean, that's kind of a rarity where fans can kind of chime in on Skype, on video, and talk boxing with you.
Yeah, it's Al's. It's at YouTube/Al's Boxing Hangouts. So if you go to YouTube.com /Al's Boxing Hangouts, you can find it. And I try and do a couple of kind of different shows there. I do a quick hit video, which is me commenting on the day's affairs in boxing. Then we do the videos that you pointed out where fans can actually send in questions and even do video questions with me. And then we have Hangouts, which are longer, where we have guests on. So it's provided me with a nice opportunity to kind of orchestrate the programming that I want for boxing fans and give them an opportunity to respond to me.
Yeah, not as if you're already busy. It's one more thing.
Yeah, I just remember going on. I had 5 minutes to kill, you know, and I said, okay, wait, there's a 20-minute space in the day. I'm not doing anything. Shame on me.
Al, real quick, 30 seconds. I always appreciate it. You know, I can talk boxing all day with you. I know you're well-rounded. You follow the world of sports. What'd you think of the NBA Finals? And does this hurt, quote-unquote, LeBron's legacy, which I think it's ridiculous that people start to talk about that.
Yeah, too, honestly. I'm not a fan as far as, like, you know, root with a dog in the hunt. But here's a man that's reached the last 5 NBA Finals, which is astonishing. And he carried that team. He carried a team on his back that was decimated. So I just don't know how you can, how people can hate on LeBron over this. He did whatever he could to try and get that team their championship. And you could say it's a miracle they got there. And now, luckily, they went, with all due respect, they went through the East, which gave them a little bit easier route. But still, you can't denigrate what the guy did.
Nope, no arguments. Al, always a pleasure. Great to have you back on the air. Appreciate it.
Good to talk to you anytime.
All right, you got it.
Bye-bye.
Be well.